Hello, my name's Greg Egan, and I'm a registered social worker with the Australian Association of Social Workers. And today I'm going to talk about a topic: 10 ways a narcissist will use your child against you. And this is an important topic because I need to, when dealing with a narcissist, it's a highly complex thing. And I have done some previous videos on narcissism, and today I'm going to talk about how they use your child or children against you. So let's get into this presentation. So to start with, I am really sorry if you're dealing with a ex-narcissistic partner post-separation, as this can be highly stressful and challenging interacting with the narcissist. And as you know from my earlier videos, I have personal experience with this. So in this presentation, I'm just going to give you 10 examples of how a narcissist may use your child as a pawn or a weapon against you during that sort of more post-separation process here, giving some personal examples along the way. So let's get into it. And it is very important to educate yourself on narcissism if you feel that you are being a victim of narcissist. And there is a lot of information on the internet and online about this, but I'm going to give 10 examples. With getting into the first example now, parental alienation. So a narcissist may try to turn your child against you by constantly speaking negative about you, portraying you as a bad parent, or blaming you for the separation. They may try to create a sense of loyalty in the child towards them and isolate them from your influence. Or they may just openly isolate you and your side of the family from having access to the child. Like in my own personal example, where my ex wife has alienated my son from me, his sister, and the whole paternal side of the family, not allowing any form of contact. And again, I want to highlight that on a previous video I put on parental alienation, where there was absolutely no criminal or child protection issues involved in this matter. It was just pure parental alienation. And it was used as a power and control dynamic here, mainly for financial gain. But let's move on. So I do refer you back to my previous video I did on parental alienation and how damaging it can be for a child. But the parent and extended family being isolated, it also hurts them as well, and the child. The child may think also that they've been totally abandoned in this whole process of parental alienation. But let's get into the next tip. So a narcissist will play games with visitation schedules. They love manipulating visitation schedules just to annoy you, just to upset you and cause you psychological distress, and also just to waste your time. So, for example, a narcissist might deliberately manipulate visitation schedules, frequently cancel plans at the last minute, or refuse to cooperate with agreed upon custody arrangements. So just say there is a legal order in place, they're going to play games with this. And this can cause confusion and distress for both you and your child. And having worked in the field of child protection and child and family work generally, I've seen this over and over again, where one parent will just constantly breach openly family court orders, and just not allowing the other parent to get access to the child for one reason or another. So here's the first example. When I moved out of the area where I was able to have regular physical contact with my son, my ex-wife did offer my parents to have him one weekend a month. But here's the clitcher, and this is what narcissists often do. They'll put a clause in this because they want to maintain this power and control. So the clause that they put to my parents so that he could see them and also see the whole paternal side and his sister, that they were able to see him as long as he was banned from communicating with me, that he was never allowed to receive gifts from me, never allowed to basically be spoken about. So it was going to be complete silence treatment about me. And also created an unrealistic, unworkable pickup arrangement that was all suited to meet her needs and not necessarily the child's. And also refused to allow me both video and telephone contact, despite a shared custody order being in place, saying because I'd moved out of the area now that I had to take her back to court if I wanted had any level of access with my child. And so For now, since the end of 2021, I've actually had no contact with my child at all. And so they will manipulate and play with custody arrangements and cause disruption to any family court orders that are in place. So it was nothing to do with the welfare or psychological well-being of my son in this particular case. It was all about her exerting power and control, and also to gain access to more money, and also doing this to meet her needs, not my son's. To this day, I don't know what my son has been told or how he is doing, and the paternal side of the family have heard nothing from him. But on that note, at least I did manage to get onto the school with a bit of pressure. The school finally gave me information saying that, generally speaking, he had been going okay, but he had a lot of issues with emotional regulation within the school grounds, and dealing with rejection and other sorts of issues that were going on there, which were potential signs of psychological harm going at home, I would be guessing. So also, I have seen this manipulating of visitation schedules so many times in my role as a child protection worker working in the welfare sector, where parents are constantly changing the goalposts around custody and access just to cause problems to the other parents. But this is more likely to occur with a ex-abusive partner or a narcissistic partner that just wants to cause you some level of distress and use the child as that pawn in these games. So, number 3, using the child as a messenger or a spy. See, when you've left a relationship with a narcissist, they've lost that power and control over you to a degree. And so here, they need to have information on you or dirt on you. They want to know everything about your personal life, your activities, your relationships. And they're going to pressure the child to act as a messenger or spy to get this information, potentially. So either pass information on to you as a way of manipulating you, or to interrogate the child after they actually come back from contact visits. And so they may try to exert this information from the child and use that information against you to cause problems for you, or send messages through the child to manipulate your emotions. They want to find out things they may be able to twist and use against you in various ways, or take things out of context, or find out things about new partners you may be connected with to try and disrupt your life. They will stalk you on social media as well. So that's another thing to be aware of, just to gain information. But the child becomes part of that pawn and getting that information about you. And I've been social media stalked by my ex-partner as well, trying to gain information on me to use against me. So this is a common tactic I have seen and heard of working in the welfare sector, where one parent will interrogate the child upon returning from access to get whatever information out of them they may be able to use or twist to their own gains. And they may even coach the child to say certain things to welfare authorities. So as an ex-child protection worker, I was often interviewing, I'd have a complaint from one parent, they would ring up, allege some form of abuse. You would go interview the child, and you could tell that child had been coached to say certain things. They'd been manipulated, or the parent may not let you interview the child alone, and they will be sort of like coaching the child or giving them body language to make them answer in certain ways. So they can be they can use the child in quite a manipulative way to gain power and control. So creating custody conflicts during custody exchanges. This is where narcissists or abusive ex-partners may purposely create tension and conflicts during exchanges or visitations. They may be intentionally late, cancel plans at the last minute, and use schedules to deliberately inconvenience you. These actions are aimed at exerting control and causing emotional distress, and they will use the child in this process. And that's why I've always advised clients who have left abusive relationships to only do exchanges in public places to reduce problems such as places with CCTV, or have a family and friend member with them, and advise clients to document any patterns of behaviors being exhibited by the narcissist or the perpetrator. And you've got to be careful at these custody exchanges too, because there is a chance that they're going to again make false allegations against you. And I know I was petrified during these custody exchanges because I know my ex-wife had made a lot of false allegations against me, and I was scared that she was going to stand there with her best friend who was willing to lie for her and actually make some allegation against me. And that was one of the reasons in the end why I moved away from the area, because of the field I work in. I can't afford to have allegations made against me, because it affects your professionalism as a counselor, it affects your professionalism as a social worker. And I was scared that this person, if they didn't get their own way, was going to do whatever they could to destroy me, as they'd previously threatened. And so that's why I always do these exchanges in a public place with CCTV. If you fear for your own safety, but you also fear they're going to use the child in some way. And number 5, they're going to use legal tactics. So a narcissist may try to manipulate the legal system to gain advantage or cause distress. They may file false allegations, which, working in child protection, I had to deal with so many false allegations, investigating kids that had been coached by parents, as I previously mentioned, that were just being put through the ringer of psychologists, legal professionals, social workers, just to try and make them say something that it could be used against the other parent in these legal battles. Or they may, as I previously mentioned, refuse to cooperate with custody arrangements to maintain control and power over the other person to further their own agendas, whether it's financial gain, whether it's gaining custody of the child, or cause just general distress to the victim. For example, as I mentioned, my ex-wife had made multiple false allegations of domestic violence, which she had actually perpetrated herself, saying I did them, and then used my son as a weapon to maximize money given to her and to financially abuse me during that separation process by not paying the mortgage, by maximizing our joint cards, putting all son's expenses on it, and her personal expenses on it, whilst I was paying full child support at the time. And this is a common strategy, using a child or children to maximize financial gain or make false allegations to cause distress to the victim of the narcissist. They will use organizations in the legal system to cause this distress and financial hardship to their ex-partners, and use the children as a pawn in this often, because they don't want you to be happy. They don't want you to move on. So they're going to use whatever means they can to make sure your life is potentially a living hell after leaving one of these narcissists. And they will use whatever means they can, family court, criminal court, they will use anything, and they will put that child in the middle of all of this, saying it's all about the child, it's all about the child, but it's not. A lot of the things they're doing is all about them getting some sort of gain, whether it's custody gain, monetary gain, whatever it is, they will use the child, or pure revenge because you dared leave them. For example, a narcissist hates it when their partners leave them, and they're going to do everything in their power to make them pay for it. So a narcissist may also drag out legal battles. So have you ever been in heard of those family court battles that may go on for 5 to 10 years or whatever in the family courts, or just multiple false lawsuits being filed, or a bunch of threats to sue the other person for defamation, make unreasonable demands during the separation process, like you could have both worked hard all your lives, you could have built finances together, but they're going to demand 80% of the assets, for example. They may manipulate the legal system to gain control, exhaust your resources, and cause emotional distress. And I've heard of many times where the victim of a narcissistic person or an abusive person has spent 5, 10 years just trying to get 1 day a week access to their kids, because the other person is using that as a pawn above to control them, to get revenge against them, to get some sort of financial gain. And they're going to be willing to lie in court. They're going to be willing to make up false allegations, because it's about power and control for them, and because they believe they can get away with all this. Narcissists have this really inflated sense of ego, and they believe, and they're going to make everyone else look like the bad guy in this process, and your child's going to feel that you're the bad guy in this process. So this is often also a tactic to stop you moving on, cause you psychological distress, revenge, drain you financially and mentally until you give in to their demands. And they're going to use this child in this process. So whatever they are asking, it will usually be to purely benefit them in some way, not always in the best interest of the child, but will use the child as the pawn in these games and the reason why they're taking this action. So they will also, during that whole custody, co-parenting sort of thing, spend a lot of time undermining you, disregarding your authority. So the narcissist may undermine your authority as a parent by disregarding your rules, discipline, or boundaries. They may indulge the child excessively in gifts, activities, ignore your decisions, or undermine your efforts to maintain consistency and structure for the child. This can sometimes be to gain the child's favor, so that the child's going to choose them over you. Because as we know about narcissists, they need the attention to be on them. And so they're going to use the child and turn the child so the child's focused on them only. And when the kids reach adolescence, they could go in pathways. Adolescents often go in the pathway of least resistance. They can be challenging. They can be resistant to their parents. And they can start to rebel against various rules you'll put in place. So where the narcissist uses this, they may reduce the amount of rules in the house to make their place look more attractive to the adolescent child. But the overall goal, sorry about that, is to reduce your contact with the child and potentially to increase their monetary gain or some other gain that they're actually aiming at. Emotional manipulation. Narcissists excel at emotional manipulation. They may guilt trip your child and you, use emotional blackmail or play the victim to gain sympathy and support from the child, turning them against you in the process. And just excuse me for a second, I've really got to drink some water. Example. Tell the child, this is what they might tell the child. If you love me, you would not leave me alone this week as I'm feeling low. So they may be completely fine, but they're going to try and emotionally blackmail this child, and which would be usually the other parent's custody weekend, for example. So they could use emotional manipulation on the child in that way, or say things to the child like, you know, they did this to me, so why are you supporting them, to try and make the child pick a side. So there's going to be a lot of these emotional manipulation games. And they may even guilt trip to you by saying, if you loved your child, you would do this for them or do that for them. But really, it's nothing to do with the child. It's all about making the narcissist's life easier. And that example, what I was doing before, the emotional manipulation, where my ex-wife had tried to, she wanted a weekend free so she could go out and do whatever she wanted. Fair enough. You want a weekend free, but she wanted it all on her terms. She didn't want to meet halfway. Like, it's like an hour and a bit drive between my parents' house and where she was living with my son. And she expected my parents, who are elderly in their late 70s, to drive all the way during peak hour traffic into the city to pick the child up after school and then drive all the way back. And rather than just going, you know what? And my parents said, no, we can't do that. It's just too hard on us in our age and all that sort of stuff. But we'll meet you halfway. So meet in between. And the ex-wife said, no, not doing that. And I could understand why she was not doing it, because that would cost her money. That would also cost her time. And she didn't want to give up any of that. Like, for example, it would cost a bit of tolls to go in that direction. She wanted my parents to pay for the tolls. And she didn't want to leave work early that afternoon, or at least put the child into after school care and then pick him up and then meet him halfway, because that's inconveniencing her Friday night, that one weekend a month. So it was all about that. It would impact on her lifestyle and maybe a bit of money to let my parents see that. And also there was that condition of saying, well, if you really love your grandchild and you want to see them, Well, you're just going to have to stop his father seeing him altogether. You're going to have to stop his father sending gifts. You're going to have to stop his father talking to them in any way, shape, or form. So there was a high level of manipulation there going on to try and guilt trip my parents into doing what she said. So number 8, withholding information. The narcissistic parent may intentionally withhold important information about the child's school, medical records, or extracurricular activities such as sports and stuff like this. This behavior aims to undermine the involvement and control and flow of information of the other parent. And I've seen this over and over again, where I'd be, as a child protection worker, out in the field working with both parents, and there'd be all these medical issues, and the child would just suddenly turn up and go, I went to the doctor last weekend. Oh, I've been diagnosed with that, diagnosed with this. Dad would go, or the other parent would just generally go, I didn't know any of this. Or suddenly there'd be all these behavioral issues at the school and the child would be expelled. The other parent did not know about this. And I was seeing this over and over again because one parent was refusing to share information with the other parent for the best interest of the child. Or it would be about conserving all these positive events. Like it could be a sporting event. It could be some sort of award night or something like that. So the other parent would deliberately withhold that information so that it looked like they were doing everything for the child and that the other parent was doing nothing. And they would be telling everyone, look at all the great things I'm doing for this child, and the other parent's bad and they don't do anything for the child. But the reality is the other parent actually did not know what was going on with this child's life, because the flow of information regarding health, education, any other sort of activities would have been completely kept from this other person. And they may even try to turn like the school against you, so they are less likely to engage with you when checking in on your child. Like even with my son, I wrote to the teacher and said, oh, can you give me an update on how things are going? And then all of a sudden I got this email back going, oh, we'll have to get permission from the executive as to whether we can talk with you. And I'm just going, what's going on here? See, I did not know what's going on. I'm going, why? There's an actual family court order in place saying I'm a custodian. They've got a copy of it. And I had to write to the principal and literally go, where in the New South Wales state legislation does it say that you can override a federal order? And in my child protection years, I've never heard of anything where the state government, New South Wales education system, can override a federal government order. And there's no risk issues here. There's no child protection issues. Why are you withholding information from my child? So I could only assume that was because something that she had potentially told them. Eventually they did. They arranged a chat where I could talk with the teacher by phone and get a bit of an update. But I had to go through so much effort just to get that information out of that teacher at school. And where before I'd been going there, picking him up all the time. But after I moved out of area, suddenly something had changed with the school dynamic there, which I didn't know. And this is common, that there'll be one parent that basically says a whole lot of bad things to the school, and then the school then takes the side. And it's probably not intentionally. They're just going on the information they're getting because they're only hearing half of the story. So there'll be a lot of manipulation that goes on there, like I've previously mentioned. But in this particular example, I'm more talking about where where one parent purely withholds information from you. And it's all about power and control. Okay, another way where they use the child is using financial leverage. During a separation process, they're going to use that child in every way, shape, or form to maximize their financial payout or custody arrangements, to do everything that's going to benefit them, whether it's gaining a house, gaining a car, getting debts paid off. They're going to use that child as leverage, financial leverage. They will threaten to, they may even threaten to withhold financial support or use it as a tool to manipulate your actions and decisions. Like, for example, my ex-wife stopped paying one of the mortgages. We had 2 mortgages, and was trying to put pressure on me to pay both, which I couldn't afford to do, and was then maximizing out a line of credit, like I previously mentioned. and then saying, putting all her personal expenses on that line of credit, until I had to go to the bank and actually literally say to them, I am a victim of domestic violence. This is financial abuse. You have to freeze this account, which they eventually did. And then I wanted to pay my mortgage, but unless it was coming out of that line of credit, we weren't able to pay it. And so I was going to bounce my mortgage. And so I had to go in there and talk about my particular situation to actually then change that around so I could pay the mortgage. And I had to go through their special domestic violence service to do that. But then the ex-wife then froze the other account, so she didn't actually have to pay anything on the other mortgage, because there was something that happened with, I think it was COVID at the time. And so they will use the child as financial leverage, whether it is to maximize child support, whether it is to maximize family court payouts, whether it is to control the flow of money, whatever it looks like. This is where a narcissist may also use false allegations as a way to restrict access to the other parent to maximize court payouts, as I just mentioned, or force the other parent to pay for certain things or agree to a certain financial legal order in exchange for extra access to the child. So using the child as a pawn to manipulate the amount of money they're actually getting out of a particular situation during that separation process. And I can tell you that a narcissistic abuser or a domestic violence perpetrator, whether male or female, they're potentially going to use that child to do whatever they can to put financial hardship on you and also maximize their financial advantage. And they're potentially going to be exposing the child to conflicts. So a narcissist may intentionally create conflicts or arguments in front of the child to manipulate the child's emotions, create a sense of chaos, and then also make themselves appear as the victim in these situations, or the more stable parent to both services, courts, and also to emotionally confuse the child to get them to support them in some way to get whatever gain they're trying to get out of this situation. So just be careful there in regards to any exchanges or how they're going to openly expose this child to any sort of arguments in front of it. Try and keep the child out of these arguments. Try and keep the child out of these conflicts. And if you're at a custody exchange, for example, and the other party tries to escalate things, just go, look, talk to the lawyer or send me an email later about it. Right now, I just want to pick up my child and spend some quality time with them. And the conversation. And public places, your McDonald's, your KFC, your supermarkets, places where there is CCTV, because they're less likely then to cause conflicts in front of the child. Or make sure you have other witnesses with you during those exchanges. Conclusion, remember it's crucial to prioritize your child's well-being and seek professional or legal support during this challenging time when dealing with a narcissist during separation, especially when, or even co-parenting. When dealing with people with narcissistic traits, it's just bloody difficult, I can tell you that. Consulting with a family lawyer and a mental health professional experienced in dealing with narcissistic behaviors, though, can help provide valuable guidance and help you protect your child's best interests. I finally recommend you do keep a diary when dealing with a narcissist, pre and post separation. Or sometimes I've also recommended to people, put a dash cam on your car. And when you're pulling up to do exchange, you have the car facing in the direction where the dash cam can film everything clearly. And when they start to use the child as a pawn in their games to gain advantage over you, whether financially or psychological, as this can be damaging to the child. But I'm just going to say that pre and post separation, when they start to use this child in their games to gain advantage over you, whether financial or psychological, just be aware this is damaging to the child. But the narcissist will not care in the strategies they use because it's a means to an end for them. Whether it's to financially damage you, whether it's to reduce your access, whether it's some sort of power and control dynamic, they don't care if the child's going to be damaged in this process. necessarily. And if the child is damaged in the process, it's going to be turned on you and you're going to be gaslit during this. But anyway, if you have thoughts on this around how or even examples how a narcissist has manipulated you when co-parenting or during post-separation and used the child and a pawn in this process, please share your experiences in the comments below so that we can start to educate people in the tactics narcissists are using and how they're using children as their pawns in these processes. Anyway, thank you for listening. And if you like these sort of videos, please hit like and please subscribe.